Hello, I'm Deb Ashby and I'm a TAP certified MOS accredited IT trainer. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to perform a logical test and make better decisions using if statements. Now you might be thinking, what on earth is an if statement? Well, if is simply another function in Excel that lets you perform a logical test and return one value for a true result and another for a false result. That sounds great, right? But what does that really mean and why is it useful? Let's look at an example. If you have a list of exam results for students and you want to mark any score over 75% as a pass and anything under 75% as fail, you could use an if statement. That's just one simple example. If statements can be utilised in a whole host of situations to help you make sense of data. So, if you are ready, let's construct our first if statement. If statements are another invaluable tool or another invaluable formula that you really need to know in Excel. And what an if statement is it's part of the logical functions group, and it will allow you to perform a logical test on some data, and then depending on whether that test is true or false, it will produce an answer. So in this example, we have some data, some product information, and we need to work out the shipping and the total. And we have some information just above the table that says there's no shipping charge for orders over £1,500. Otherwise, there is a 2% of the cost shipping charge. So we can use an if statement to work this all out for us, okay? So I like to work it through in my head and say, if the total cost is greater than or equal to 1,500, then that's fine, there's no shipping charge. If it's under, then we need to work out 2% of that total cost. So let's type that in, equals if, and we're going to open our bracket. Our logical test, as we said, our logical test is going to be if the total cost, so F7, is greater than or equal to 1,500. That is our logical test, okay? We then put in comma, and you'll see underneath, now we have to say, okay, if that is true, what do you want me to do? So if it is greater than or equal to 1,500, there's no shipping charge, so do nothing. If it's under, so if that's false, we want it to work out what 2% of the total cost is. So F7 times 2%, and that will be the shipping charge, okay? So we have our logical test, our answer if true, and our answer if false. So in this case, we can then copy that down by double-clicking the autofill handle, and a quick visual check shows me that that appears to be correct. Everything over 1,500 doesn't have a shipping charge. Now I'm just going to delete this out, and I'm going to show it to you a slightly different way using the function dialog box. As I said, this sometimes is easier for people when they're learning, but it's exactly the same. So I'm going to go up to my logical test, and it's the same thing. So our logical test is if F7 is greater than or equal to 1,500. If that's true, do nothing. If it's false, we want to work out 2% of that total cost. So F7 multiplied by 2%. And click on OK, and that gives us the exact same total. We've just got there in a slightly different way. Either option is fine. We can then complete our total, which is a basic sum calculation. We just want to add the total cost and the shipping, so I'm just going to do a very basic sum calculation. So F7 plus G7, and there we go, and I'm going to use my autofill handle to copy that down. So that is a very basic if statement. Again, these just take practice. A couple of other functions that are within the if family are Countif and SUMIF. So these are two other really useful functions that it's worth knowing, which you might find particularly useful. So let's scroll across and take a look very briefly at how those work. Now what Countif will do is you can say, okay, count if, and then we can add some criteria. So I might want to count how many items in this total cost column are over 1,500. Okay, so I'm going to say equals count if. I'm going to open my bracket, And it's asking me for my range. So I'm counting the items in the total cost column. So I would need to select that cell range. And I haven't named this one, so I'm just going to highlight all of the cells, comma, and then my criteria. So I only want to count the cell if it's greater than 1500. And this needs to go in quote marks. And close off my bracket. Press enter, and I can see there are 516 cells that are over 1500. SUMIF works in a very similar way. We're going to keep it consistent and use that total cost column, but this time I am going to name this range. So I'm going to call this total underscore sales. Should have called it cost really. And let's type in equals SUMIF, open our bracket. And again, you could press F3 if you've named the range, but I'm going to type mine in, so total sales. I'm going to type in my criteria. So I'm going to say I want you to sum this time if the cell is over, and let's just type that in, so comma, and it needs to go in speech marks again, or quote marks. So if it's greater than 1500, I want you to sum the totals together. And close my bracket. And hit enter. And I can see there we now have a figure that's over 2 million.